Atlantis, a lost civilization beneath the ocean. For thousands of years, people have searched for it. But what if it was real? If you enjoy exploring ancient mysteries like Atlantis, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and because there are many more lost civilizations waiting to be discovered. And now, let the journey begin. Enjoy this visual exploration of the legendary city of Atlantis.
Picture a city that never existed. Or did it? For over 2,300 years, humanity has been searching for Atlantis, the lost civilization, the sunken empire, the advanced society that vanished in a single day and night. We've looked in the Atlantic Ocean, the Mediterranean, Spain, Antarctica, even the Caribbean. Countless expeditions, satellite imaging, deep-sea exploration, pseudo-scientific theories, conspiracy documentaries. But here's the truth. There is only one source for the story of Atlantis. Not ancient Egyptian records, not archaeological discoveries, not underwater ruins, just one man writing in Athens around 360 BC. Plato, the philosopher who gave us the allegory of the cave, who imagined the perfect society in the Republic, who explored the nature of reality, justice, and knowledge. That Plato also described a powerful island empire beyond the Pillars of Hercules that sank into the ocean after failing to conquer Athens. So, was Atlantis real, or was it the most successful fictional story in human history? Using historical research, archaeological evidence, and Plato's original texts, we're going to explore the truth about Atlantis. Not the sensationalized version, not the New Age mysticism, not the ancient alien theories, the actual story, what Plato wrote, why he wrote it, what it might have been based on. And yes, we'll reconstruct what 24 hours in Atlantis might have looked like, according to Plato's description. From philosophy to fiction, from myth to meaning, this is the real story of Atlantis. Let's be absolutely clear. The only ancient source for Atlantis is Plato's dialogues, written around 360 BC. Two dialogues, specifically Timaeus and Critias, not histories, dialogues, philosophical conversations between fictional characters discussing ideas. This is crucial to understand. Plato wasn't a historian. He was a philosopher using stories to explore concepts about justice, power, and the ideal state. But he told the Atlantis story as if it were true history. The way Plato presents the tale is clever. In Timaeus, the character Critias claims the story came from his great-grandfather, who heard it from the famous Athenian lawmaker Solon. Solon supposedly traveled to Egypt around 590 BC and spoke with priests in the city of Sais. These Egyptian priests, according to the story, told Solon about events that happened 9,000 years before his time. That would place Atlantis around 9,600 BC, before written history, before the pyramids, before Mesopotamian civilization. Already this is suspicious. The ancient Egyptians didn't have records going back 9,000 years before Solon. Their recorded history began around 3000 BC, but Plato presents it as fact passed down through generations. So what did Plato actually say about Atlantis? According to the story, Atlantis was a massive island, larger than Libya and Asia Minor combined, located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the Strait of Gibraltar. The island was given to the god Poseidon, who fell in love with a mortal woman named Cleito. Poseidon created a paradise for her. He isolated a hill at the center of the island by carving alternating rings of land and water around it. 3 rings of water, 2 rings of land. Cleito bore Poseidon 10 sons. The eldest was named Atlas, and he became the first king. The island and the ocean were named after him. The 10 sons ruled 10 regions of the empire, passing their kingdoms down through generations. Now, here's where Plato gets specific, extremely specific. The capital city was built on those concentric rings. The central island where Poseidon's original shrine stood was about 5 stades in diameter. That's roughly half a mile. Each ring of land was separated by rings of water like a moat, but enormous. The Atlanteans built bridges across the water rings. They dug a huge canal from the sea to the outermost ring, allowing ships to sail into the very heart of the city. The rings were fortified with walls. The walls were covered in metal. The outermost wall was covered in brass. The middle wall was covered in tin. The innermost wall, the one surrounding the central citadel, was covered in orichalcum, a mysterious red-gold metal that Plato describes as second only to gold in value and gleaming like fire. No one knows what oracle actually was. Possibly an alloy of copper and zinc. Possibly just a literary invention. At the center of the city stood a magnificent temple to Poseidon. Plato describes it in detail. The temple was a stadium, long and 3 plethora wide, about 600 feet by 300 feet. Its exterior was covered entirely in silver. The roof was covered in ivory. Inside, the walls, floors, and ceiling were covered in gold, silver, ivory, and oracle. At the center stood a massive statue of Poseidon in a chariot pulled by winged horses, so tall it touched the ceiling. Around the temple, statues of the original 10 kings and their wives stood as monuments. Outside the temple was a sacred grove, hot and cold springs, elaborate baths, gymnasiums, racetracks for horses. This was a city of incredible wealth and engineering. But Atlantis wasn't just a city. It was an empire. According to Plato, Atlantis controlled the whole island and several others, as well as parts of the continent. The Atlanteans had expanded their power across the Mediterranean, conquering Libya up to Egypt and Europe as far as Tirana, modern Tuscany. They had a massive military, 10,000 chariots, 1,200 ships, a standing army of hundreds of thousands. The island itself was rich in resources, forests full of timber, mountains full of minerals, plains full of crops, elephants, wild and domesticated animals, every kind of plant, 2 harvests per year, abundant food, unimaginable wealth. But here's the crucial part of Plato's story. Atlantis didn't fall because of lack of resources or external enemies. It fell because of moral decay. Plato writes, "For many generations, as long as the divine nature lasted in them, they were obedient to the laws and well-affectioned toward the gods. They possessed true and in every way great spirits, practicing gentleness and wisdom in the various chances of life. But then, when the divine portion began to fade away and became diluted too often and too much with the mortal admixture, and the human nature got the upper hand, they then, being unable to bear their fortune, behaved unseemly. In other words, they became arrogant, greedy, corrupt. They stopped caring about virtue and started caring about power. The gods noticed. Zeus, the god of gods, called a council and decided to punish them. And that's where the Critias dialogue ends unfinished. We never get Zeus's punishment directly from Critias, but in Timaeus we learn the outcome. Afterwards, there occurred violent earthquakes and floods, and in a single day and night of misfortune, all your warlike men in a body sank into the earth, and the island of Atlantis in like manner disappeared in the depths of the sea. One day, one night, gone. One crucial detail often overlooked. Atlantis didn't just sink. It was defeated first. According to Plato, the Atlanteans tried to conquer the entire Mediterranean. They attacked ancient Athens, and Athens, portrayed by Plato as an ideal state with virtuous guardians living simply without private property, defeated the mighty Atlantean Empire. Only after this defeat did earthquakes and floods destroy both the Atlantean army and the island itself. This is important. The story isn't just about Atlantis. It's about Athens defeating Atlantis, virtue defeating hubris, the ideal state triumphing over a corrupt empire. Remember that. It matters. Most scholars today agree Plato invented Atlantis. It's a philosophical allegory, a thought experiment, a cautionary tale about what happens when societies lose their moral foundations. Why do scholars think this? First, there's no mention of Atlantis anywhere in ancient literature before Plato. Not in Herodotus, who traveled extensively and recorded countless stories. Not in any Egyptian records, and we have a lot of ancient Egyptian texts. Not in any other Greek sources, just Plato. Second, the story perfectly serves Plato's philosophical agenda. In the Republic, written before Timaeus and Critias, Plato described his vision of an ideal state governed by philosopher kings, warriors living communally without private property, everyone fulfilling their natural role. In the Atlantis story, ancient Athens represents this ideal state. Simple, virtuous, militarily invincible because of their moral superiority. Atlantis represents the opposite. Wealthy, imperialistic, morally corrupt, doomed to fail. The story becomes a case study. What happens when societies prioritize wealth and power over wisdom and justice? Plato often used myths and allegories in his philosophy. The allegory of the cave, the myth of Gyges' ring. He would invent stories to illustrate philosophical points. The Atlantis story fits this pattern perfectly. And remember, Plato wrote dialogues, conversations between characters. He could put ideas in their mouths without claiming them as his own views. The character Critias insists the story is true, but Plato never says it directly. This ambiguity is intentional. It makes you think, question, debate, which is exactly what philosophy is supposed to do. Some scholars think Plato was commenting on events in his own time. In 415 BC, just 14 years before Plato was born, Athens launched a massive military expedition against Sicily. The Sicilian expedition was a disaster. The Athenian fleet was destroyed. Thousands died. Athens, once the most powerful city-state in Greece, never fully recovered. Sound familiar? A powerful naval empire becomes arrogant, launches an imperialist campaign, meets catastrophic defeat. Maybe Atlantis isn't about the distant past. Maybe it's about recent history. Similarly, in 373 BC, just a few years before Plato wrote Timaeus, the Greek city of Hell was destroyed by an earthquake and tsunami. The entire city sank into the sea. Plato would have known about this. Everyone in Greece would have. A city destroyed in a single night by earthquakes and floods, swallowed by the sea. Maybe that disaster influenced how Plato described Atlantis's end, but not everyone agrees it's pure fiction. A few scholars argue that Plato might have been using real historical memories, heavily fictionalized. Maybe not of Atlantis specifically, but of some catastrophic event in the distant past. Some point to the Bronze Age collapse around 1200 BC. Numerous Mediterranean civilizations, the Mycenaeans, the Hittites, the Ugarit, many others, collapsed within a few decades, possibly due to earthquakes, droughts, invasions by the mysterious sea peoples. Could memories of these catastrophes passed down through generations have influenced Plato's story? Others point to Santorini. We'll get to that in a moment. The point is, even if Atlantis didn't exist, the story might have been inspired by real events. But many of them was before than so many of the disasters, collapsed civilizations, ancient memories preserved in myth and legend. Here's the frustrating truth. We don't know what Plato believed. Did he think Atlantis was real? Was he being deliberately ambiguous? Even Aristotle, Plato's own student, reportedly said his teacher invented Atlantis to make a philosophical point. But later, ancient writers took it seriously. Crantor, an early Platonic scholar, supposedly claimed Egyptian priests confirmed the story. Strabo and Posidonius, ancient geographers, debated whether it could be real. The ambiguity has persisted for 2,300 years, and that's part of why the story endures. If Atlantis was inspired by a real event, the most compelling candidate is the Minoan eruption of Santorini around 1600 BC, about 1/200th years before Plato. One of the most powerful volcanic eruptions in human history devastated the Ion. The island of Thera, now called Santorini, partially exploded. Volcanic Explosivity Index 7, comparable to Krakatoa in 1883. The eruption ejected roughly 30 to 40 cubic kilometers of rock and ash into the atmosphere. Tsunamis swept across the Ion, devastating coastal settlements. The island's center collapsed into the sea, creating the massive caldera you see today when you visit Santorini, buried beneath the ash. Akriri, a Minoan settlement discovered in 1967, preserved like Pompeii, multi-story buildings, sophisticated plumbing, elaborate frescoes showing ships, animals, landscapes, evidence of a wealthy, advanced Bronze Age civilization. The Minoans, centered on Crete, were the first major European civilization. They built massive palaces like Knos, created intricate art, dominated Mediterranean trade, and then sometime after 1600 BC, their civilization declined. For decades, archaeologists thought the Thera eruption destroyed the Minoans. A single catastrophic event, wiping out an advanced civilization. Sound familiar? But modern research has complicated this. The eruption happened around 1600 BC. The Minoan decline happened gradually over the next 200 years. The eruption damaged them, certainly, but it didn't instantly destroy them. Still, the parallels are striking. An advanced island civilization, wealthy, sophisticated, connected to the sea, destroyed by a volcanic catastrophe, partly sunk beneath the waves. If Egyptian priests knew about the Thera eruption, and they might have, given Egyptian Minoan trade connections, they could have told Solon, and Solon could have told his descendants, and Plato could have fictionalized it. The eruption said that they moving the location west, and the date back 9,000 years. This is the most academically respectable Atlantis theory, but it's still just a theory. There are issues with the Santorini-Atlantis connection. First, the geography doesn't match. Plato specifically says Atlantis was beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the Strait of Gibraltar in the Atlantic Ocean. Santorini is in the Aegean, inside the Mediterranean. Plato's Athens fought Atlantis, but historical Athens didn't exist during the Minoan period. Plato describes Atlantis as larger than Libya and Asia Minor combined. Santorini is tiny. The timeline is wrong. The location is wrong. The scale is wrong. Unless you assume Plato changed everything, the fit isn't perfect. Most classicists today think if Plato was inspired by Santorini, he transformed it so completely that calling Atlantis the Minoan eruption misses the point. Santorini wasn't the only Bronze Age disaster. Around 1200 BC, the entire eastern Mediterranean collapsed. The Menian palaces in Greece burned. The Hittite Empire in Anatolia fell. Cities across the Levant were destroyed. This is called the Bronze Age collapse. The causes are debated: earthquakes, drought, invasions by the sea peoples. mysterious raiders who attacked Egypt and other civilizations. Some scholars wonder, could memories of the Sea Peoples have influenced Plato? Aggressive naval invaders from the west, attacking Egypt and the Mediterranean. Plato describes the Atlanteans as exactly this. The Sea Peoples remain mysterious. We don't know who they were or where they came from. But Egyptian records describe their attacks, their failure against Egypt, like Atlantis failing against Athens. Could Plato have heard these stories and incorporated them? Possible, but unproven. Another candidate, Tartessos, an ancient civilization in southern Spain near modern Helva and Cadiz. The Greeks knew about Tartessos. They traded with it. It was wealthy, famous for its metals, gold, silver, tin. And then, around 500 BC, it mysteriously vanished from history. Some scholars, especially in Spain, have suggested Tartessos inspired Atlantis. It was in the right location, beyond the Pillars of Hercules in the Atlantic region. It was wealthy and advanced. It disappeared. But there's no evidence Tartessos sank into the sea. More likely it was conquered or declined economically, and Plato never mentions it specifically. Here's the reality. Ancient civilizations did collapse catastrophically. Earthquakes did destroy cities overnight. Hell in Greece, Pompeii and Herculaneum in Italy, Ugarit in Syria, countless others. Plato lived in a world where everyone knew about such disasters. He didn't need to base Atlantis on one specific event. He could draw from general knowledge about how civilizations fall. Natural disasters, moral decay, military defeat. These were universal themes. The power of the Atlantis story isn't that it describes one particular lost civilization. It's that it describes all of them. Since the 19th century, people have been obsessed with finding Atlantis. Not as allegory, as a real place. In 1882, Ignatius Donnelly published Atlantis, the Antediluvian World. Donnelly argued that Atlantis was real, located in the Atlantic, and was the source of all civilization. Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Americas, all descended from Atlantean colonists. The book was massively popular. It launched modern Atlantis pseudoscience. Since then, Atlantis has been discovered in the Atlantic Ocean, Mid-Atlantic Ridge, the Mediterranean, Santorini, Crete, Malta, Cyprus, Sardinia, Spain, Donana National Park, Cadiz, Antarctica, the Caribbean, Bahamas, Cuba, the North Sea, Indonesia, and many more. Some of these are based on misinterpretation of satellite imagery, some on underwater formations that are clearly natural, some on pure speculation. The most recent high-profile claim, southern Spain. In 2011, a team led by archaeologist Richard Fry announced they found Atlantis buried in the mudflats of Donana National Park near Cadiz. Using ground-penetrating radar and satellite imagery, they detected rectangular structures beneath the marshes. They claimed these were the remnants of Atlantis, destroyed by a tsunami. The announcement made headlines worldwide. But Spanish archaeologists who had been working in the area for years pushed back hard. They said the structures were Roman-era ruins or natural formations. They accused Fried of making sensational claims without proper evidence. No peer-reviewed papers, no excavation, just radar images and speculation. The scientific community remains deeply skeptical, yet the theory persists in popular media. In the 1960s and 70s, some writers proposed Antarctica as Atlantis. The idea, before Antarctica froze, it was habitable. An advanced civilization lived there. Then, due to Earth's costal displacement, or some other catastrophe, Antarctica shifted to the South Pole and froze. Evidence cited the Piri Reis map, a 16th century map that supposedly shows Antarctica ice-free. This theory was promoted by Charles Hapgood, Graham Hancock, and others. The problems. Antarctica has been frozen for millions of years, not thousands. The Peary Race map doesn't actually show Antarctica. It shows the South American coast. Earth's crust doesn't shift rapidly like that. Plate tectonics works over millions of years. Modern geology completely disproves this, but it remains popular in pseudo-scientific circles. Why do people keep claiming to find Atlantis? Part of it is genuine curiosity. The story is compelling. The mystery is irresistible. Part of it is misunderstanding. People see underwater formations and assume they're artificial. Part of it is sensationalism. "We found Atlantis" gets headlines. And part of it is a deeper longing. Modern culture wants to believe in lost civilizations, ancient wisdom, forgotten technologies. We're told progress is linear. We're the most advanced we've ever been. But Atlantis suggests otherwise. Maybe we lost something. Maybe ancient peoples knew things we don't. This is comforting and exciting. It's also almost certainly wrong. No archaeological evidence supports advanced prehistoric civilizations. The actual timeline of human development is well established, but the myth endures. To be clear, mainstream archaeology and classical scholarship agree. Atlantis, as described by Plato, did not exist. It's a philosophical allegory, maybe inspired by real events. Santorini, Tartessos, Bronze Age collapses. Specific civilization Plato described, an island empire beyond Gibraltar, sinking in one day around 9,600 BC, is fiction. There's no shame in that. Fiction can be more powerful than fact. The Atlantis story has shaped how we think about civilization, hubris, and catastrophe for over 2 millennia. That's remarkable. Let's do something different. Forget the archaeology. Forget the theories. Let's reconstruct 24 hours in Atlantis, exactly as Plato described it. Not as history, as thought experiment. If Plato's Atlantis existed, what would a day there look like? Using only his text, let's step inside the city. The sun rises over the Atlantic, illuminating the concentric rings of Atlantis. You're standing at the edge of the outermost canal, watching ships arrive from across the empire. Phoenician traders from the Mediterranean, Libyan merchants, ships from conquered territories bringing tribute. The canal is enormous, wide enough for triams to pass each other, deep enough for the largest vessels. It leads from the open ocean to the heart of the city, cutting through each ring. Behind you, the walls gleam, brass on the outer ring. The morning light makes it shine like gold. You cross a bridge to the first ring of land. This is the military district. Barracks, arsenals, stables for the war elephants. Atlantis has a massive standing army, ready for the next conquest. Soldiers drill in formation. Chariots race around the training grounds. You cross another bridge, another ring of water. This one is for civilian ships, trade vessels, fishing boats. The second ring of land is commercial. Markets, warehouses. The sounds of buying and selling echo across the water. Then the final ring of water. And finally, the innermost island. The central island is sacred ground. At its heart, the temple of Poseidon. You approach slowly. The building is overwhelming. 600 feet long, 300 feet wide. Every surface covered in precious metals. The exterior walls are plated in silver. They reflect the sunlight like a mirror. The roof is covered in ivory. Carved panels depicting sea creatures, dolphins, fish. You enter through massive bronze doors. Inside, the walls are covered in oracle, the mysterious red gold metal. It glows in the lamplight, warm, almost alive. Gold inlay decorates every surface. Scenes of Poseidon's deeds, the creation of Atlantis, the 10 kings receiving their domains. And at the center of the temple, the statue, Poseidon himself. So tall, he touches the ceiling, standing in a chariot pulled by 6 winged horses. Around him, 100 Nereids riding dolphins. The statue is made of gold. The chariot is ivory. The horses have manes of orichalcum. Priests in white robes tend the altar. Incense burns. Sacrificial bulls wait outside. This is the heart of Atlantean power, the connection to the divine. Beyond the temple lies the palace of the kings. Atlantis is ruled by 10 kings, descended from the 10 sons of Poseidon. The eldest line, descended from Atlas, holds supremacy. But the 10 kings meet regularly to discuss laws and justice. You watch a council session. The kings sit around a table made of orichalcum. Before making judgments, they perform a ritual. Bulls are set loose in the temple precinct. The kings hunt them without weapons, using only ropes and sticks. When they catch one, they lead it to the pillar at the center of the temple, a pillar inscribed with the laws of Poseidon. They sacrifice the bull and swear oaths on its blood. Only then do they judge. This is how Atlantis maintains its divine connection, through ritual, through blood, through absolute adherence to the laws left by Poseidon. As the sun sets, you return to the outer rings. The commercial district is still bustling. Merchants close deals. Ships are being loaded for tomorrow's voyages. You pass through the gymnasia, athletes training, wrestlers grappling, runners circling the track. There's even a separate track for horses, a hippodrome encircling the entire island. The Atlanteans love horses. They breed them for war and sport. You walk past the public baths. Hot springs and cold springs flow from beneath the city, Poseidon's gift. Elaborate bathing complexes serve the citizens, with separate facilities even for horses. Even the animals live in luxury here. Night falls. Torches light the bridges and the walls. The outer walls, covered in brass, glow in the firelight. Ships continue to move through the canals. Trade never stops. You stand at the edge of the outermost ring, looking back toward the center. From here you can see all 3 rings of water, all the bridges, the walls rising in tiers. And at the very center, the temple lit from within, its silver walls reflecting the flames. This is Atlantis at its peak, wealthy, powerful, seemingly invincible. But according to Plato, this moment is fleeting. Already the moral decay has begun. The kings are becoming arrogant, greedy, less connected to their divine heritage. They're planning their next conquest, ancient Athens. They don't know they're about to fail. They don't know that Zeus is watching. They don't know that within a generation, this entire city will sink beneath the waves. For now, Atlantis glitters, perfect, eternal, but nothing lasts forever. So, was Atlantis real? No, almost certainly not. Plato invented it to make a philosophical point about hubris and virtue. Maybe he was inspired by real disasters. Santorini, Tartessos, the Sea Peoples, the Bronze Age collapse. But the specific civilization he described didn't exist. And that's okay, because the power of Atlantis isn't in its historicity. It's in what it represents. Atlantis is every civilization that rose and fell. Ancient Rome, the Maya, the Khmer Empire, the Indus Valley. All of them were advanced, wealthy, seemingly invincible. All of them collapsed, usually not from external enemies, but from internal decay, corruption, inequality, and the loss of shared values. Plato understood this 2,300 years ago. His message, no matter how powerful you become, if you lose your moral foundation, you're doomed. That's why Atlantis resonates. Not because we want to find a lost city, but because we recognize ourselves in it. Our own civilizations are wealthy, technologically advanced, seemingly invincible. But are we virtuous? Are we just? Are we sustainable? Or are we like Atlantis in its final days, arrogant, greedy, blind to our own fragility? People will keep looking for Atlantis. Every few years, someone will announce they've found it. Spain, Antarctica, the Bahamas. Scientists will push back. The claims will fade, and then new ones will emerge. Because we want to believe. We want to believe in lost wisdom, forgotten technologies, ancient mysteries waiting to be uncovered. We want to believe that history still has secrets left to reveal. And maybe in a way it does. Not Atlantis, but other lost cities, real ones. Göbekli Tepe, Çatalhöyük, the underwater cities off the coast of India. Archaeology keeps surprising us, but none of these is Atlantis. Atlantis may be something different, something larger. In the end, Plato's genius was creating a story so compelling that even 2,300 years later, we are still talking about it, still searching for it, still debating what it means. Plato wrote only 2 dialogues about Atlantis. One of them was never even finished. Yet from those fragments, an entire mythology emerged. Hundreds of books, thousands of theories, and countless expeditions. Not because Atlantis was proven to be real, but because it feels like it should be. Because the story captures something fundamental about human civilization. Our capacity for greatness, our tendency toward arrogance, and our inevitable fragility. So the question, did Atlantis really exist? Perhaps that question misses the point. Atlantis exists now in our imagination, in our fears, and in our understanding of what it means to build a civilization. And as long as civilizations rise and fall, the story of Atlantis will endure. Thank you for watching Time Warp Cities. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the mystery of Atlantis, subscribe for more historical explorations of the ancient world. And leave a comment below. Do you think Atlantis was based on a real civilization? Or was it simply Plato's greatest invention?